This is the world. Yeah, sure, whatever. You've already seen films open with a map of the world with some gangster-ass narrator telling you that this is the world. But this is what we call an establishing shot. It's the hook in the line, right? And then pops up this little thing called a segue, which is my opportunity to tell you about this little world of ours. If you spin around the camera and face the back of the night, the dark of space, well, there is no up out here, or down, no direction. To which you reply one of two ways. Wow! Or, ugh. But please, keep that shit to yourself. Now, spin back around. Let me ask you something. Did you ever play that game, Make Believe, when you were a kid? That's what movies are. They're fake. This is a spaceship, and we don't have these yet. This is the Earth, and we live here, right now. Everyone you've ever known, everyone you've ever loved or lost, they live here. Every conquering hero, every supervillain of every story, every comic book, every novel of great works, Ulysses, the Iliad, everything you've ever read, watched, heard, every grand architectural design, everything you've laughed at, cried, gotten upset over, been angry about. It was all here, on this little rock covered with water, floating in the vastness of the dark of space. And sometimes it's scary to think about, Fermi's paradox, that we might all be alone. But it also means something else. Since everyone you've ever known lives here, that means we're all in this together. We're all little specks on a little rock floating in the black. Let's recap. The first thing we did here was to establish the location where the duration of our story takes place. I did this by giving you a perspective, or quite literally, on this occasion, I framed the world. In both film and political science, we use this word, frame, to define very similar concepts. But we political science wonks, we always have to go one step further, don't we? In this case, we have to put that frame to work. Framework. In political science, a framework is merely a picture that you draw around an idea. And in film, a frame is everything that you see to the edge of the screen. The film that I reviewed for my final project is called Disturbing the Peace, and it takes place within an atmosphere of the Palestinian environment, where there are Israelis on one side of a wall and Palestinians on another. And do you remember this word that we used in one of our readings to define noise that exists outside of the frame? Noise that goes on without notice. Gunshots, bullets in the distance. Noises that the people on screen, they don't think anything of. But you as a viewer, you're like, what is that? What's going on behind them? Was that a gunshot? The word in question is acousmatic sound. It's on page 451 of our reading, Fighting Without Weapons. Acousmatic sound. That is, sound heard without seeing its cause. In Tales of the Square, it was tear gas canisters. And in Palestine, it was gunshots. In my situation, it's the people working next door, but you get the idea. Acousmatic sound. What is an I-narration? An I-narrator is a story from the perspective of a singular individual in a singular moment, talking to you in that moment, and telling you things that you're supposed to think are the truth. Because why would anybody lie to you? It's a documentary. It's supposed to be true. That's forgetting the fact that sometimes people can just make shit up. And a lot of people do make shit up. I mean, I remember I told somebody that I was chained to a tree and watched somebody get their throat cut. That never happened. It was a dream that I had. You know. I wanted to see what it was like to lie. How many of the stories that we hear every day are the truth? And how many of them are lies? I ask this question because everyone in the film that I watched, in every single film that I've ever watched, has a story that they're trying to tell, and a message that they're trying to convey. But who's lying? Who's telling the truth? How do you know what to believe? But really, the camera doesn't lie. It's the stories that we tell. It's how we use the footage that's the lie. But the camera, what you see, it never lies. I can never lie to you and say that I don't have a mustache. But I can lie in this frame. I can tell you that my shoes right now are blue, when in reality, they're black and red. I can tell you that my underwear is green, when in reality it is black. And I can tell you that the logo on my sweatshirt is Nike, when in reality it's Father Christmas. I can tell you that I'm not fat, when in reality I'm a little overweight. See, the truth is only what
the camera sees. Nothing beyond the edge of this frame. And that's why it's called a framework. Because a frame is only what exists within sight of it. You cannot see how many fingers I'm holding up right now. I'll give you a clue. It's one. Right? That's the truth of the camera. Only what you see. Hannah Arendt argues that ideologies are much the same. They hide the truth. Ideologies, she says, isms, which to the satisfaction of their adherents can explain everything and every occurrence by deducing it from a single premise, are a very recent phenomenon, and for many decades played a negligible role in political life. Hannah Arendt says that ideologies are the root of evil, often. Ideologies led to the rise of Stalin and Hitler. It is philosophies that understand the world outside of the frame. Ideologies are only concerned with that little, tiny, narrow box. And so the truth doesn't matter to an ideology, because an ideology has something to accomplish.
And this is why, when you're trying to actually tell the truth, when you're trying as desperately hard as possible to make people understand what is going on, you have as wide angle shots as possible. In this wall, for example, the wall, that wall where on one side there are Palestinians and on the other side are Israelis, this is as wide of an angle as you can get. In order to utterly convince someone that what they are seeing is real, sometimes filmmakers will use reenactment actors. None of the people that you see in this shot were actually there. They're all actors that were hired for this production in order for the story to be more accurately understood, to be the truth. But you weren't there. This is just a story that's being told. Most of the iNarrator films that we watched in this class had one or two people telling the majority of the story. But in this film, it was slightly different because you had 1, 2, 3, 4, I've lost count.
Peace is an effort of diplomacy. And it's really hard.
Do you remember back in the day when everyone played pool? Celebrities and politicians and famous people. It's because it's a metaphor. You make these do what you want. Well, not exactly. They'll only do what you want if you ask them. And they'll only do exactly what you ask. But if you know how to ask, they'll do what you want. Hey, what's up?
I was just checking. I was just going to check the pool cue, but...
Oh no, I'm just doing a metaphor for a video project.
Okay.
See, this is a metaphor for being too emotionally invested in something. When you're too close to something. There we go. This is a metaphor for being close to something, but at the same time, knowing exactly how to pull away at the right moment. This is you.
These are all of the delegates of the international relations community. As opposed to the other movies that we've watched in this class about violent revolutions or peaceful protests, this movie differs because every single character that we meet along the way, every eye narrator, was at some point in their life a violent actor. And that's a different story than the one that the other movies are telling. This is a story about soldiers and combatants reforming themselves, coming to grips with all of the terrible, shitty things that they've done in their life. The buildings they've destroyed, the bombs they've exploded, the people they've shot. Who were just normal people, right? There's a different take. And the story goes on to say that these people, they get together to form a peaceful and cooperative union. But the establishing shots are all violence. And it was very interesting for me to parallel these establishing shots with my own life and where I come from. My grandfather, on my father's side, he was both a United States Army soldier. He fought on Iwo Jima. He was a captain in the United States Army. But after World War II was over, he became the San Francisco contact for the IRA. At least that's the story that my family tells. And he would house IRA bagmen as they were raising money and funds for the fight overseas. As long as they were in the town of San Francisco, they would stay at my grandfather's house.
We keep these out and we keep up there.
That's just fair enough. I don't want nothing to do with
We
you.
have lived for about a past month with this fear too.
Well, what fear?
The fear
what
of
about
you
this? What about
people.
this? Poor people?
Yes.
Are you choking me?
We aren't the Armstrongs that we're brought up to be.
But you're not the
You
Armstrong.
have accused of being
How many is?
Armstrongs.
If I wasn't working.
I don't care.
Look, if I wasn't working. Come on.
The troops had to move quickly to prevent the Catholic crowds massing. In Dover Street, Catholics and Protestants jealously guard their own territory to the last inch.
That we now must push this barricade back. It will be impossible for you to apply it throughout this city.
But what difference is 20 feet going to make?
The difference is, which I tried to explain to you earlier, that on Sunday, you fellas had to tear gas our people. Why? Because an incident started whereby Republicans marched tricolour into Percy Street. And the closer they get to our people, the more trouble you're going to have controlling both crowds.
Did you catch all that? It's all walls. It's all about walls. What do the walls mean? Borders and barriers and big giant ass fucking concrete walls standing as a monument to our divisions. The fact that we just can't seem to get along with each other. What sort of childish notion is that? We could just exist in peace. Let's play a game for just a second. Let's identify whether or not the following sequences are from Ireland or Palestine. And it's going to be more tricky than you think.
My whole point is with that sequence is that you can't tell the difference. Some of the shots from Israel were in black and white. Some of the shots from Ireland were in color. You can't tell the difference. Intentionally made it that way. Because even though 10,000 more people died in the Second Intifada, violence is violence. No matter where you are, no matter how it got that way, no matter what you look like, or who the enemy is, violence begets violence. And this film, Disturbing the Peace, it's a great look at how to counter violence with peace. How to come back and to terms with who we really should be as humans. I really appreciate that. Something that every character in this film does, every soldier who at one point in time in their life was holding a weapon, is to tell a story of how they saw the errors in their ways. And it is surprising to me that for most of them, it was a single moment, a single split second that made them stop right where they were and see what was really going on. In my closing of this video, I'll share with you that moment for me. Understand that I once thought that being an Irish Republican meant being true to my genes. I had desperately wanted to do something, anything, for the Irish cause. And then one day, I found the following clip on YouTube. I hope desperately that I've covered all of my talking points. I don't even know what I was doing making a movie. God. But this is true. This is a true story. What you see next is the exact moment that I decided that I would fight for peace at all costs. Because the guy, you may not realize it when he starts talking, but the guy who starts talking, well, at the time he said this, himself and the rest of the people on that stage, they were all living in Dublin. They were abroad. They were in the United States at the time of the Enniskillen bombing. But to go out against the IRA like that publicly in the support of peace, it meant that when they got home, when they got back to Dublin, they could have all been killed. That's how important this was, this singular moment. And I believe that it may have actually changed the course of the war.
And let me tell you something. I've had enough of Irish Americans who haven't been back to their country in 20 or 30 years come up to me and talk about the resistance, the revolution back home, and the glory of the revolution, and the glory of dying for the revolution. Fuck the revolution! They don't talk about the glory of killing for the revolution. What's the glory in taking a man from his bed and gunning him down in front of his wife and his children? Where's the glory in that? Where's the glory in bombing a Remembrance Day parade of old age pensioners, their medals taken out and polished up for the day? Where's the glory in that? To leave them dying, or crippled for life, or dead under the rubble of the revolution that the majority of the people in my country don't want.